Thanks so much for joining us in the 2025 Courageous Leadership Colloquium at the University of Olivet. We are in session 20, the global keynote, battling to save the route of the Great Migration, the beating heart of our planet's natural heritage. Each year, millions of wildebeest, zebras, and gazelles make the Great Migration through Tanzania's Serengeti and Kenya's Maasai Mara, the most iconic wildlife journey on Earth. Today, this ancient route is under siege from greed, mismanagement, and short sighted exploitation. Dr. Dapash and Dr. Poole, leaders on the front lines of this fight, will share the strategies and actions that are exposing this travesty and mobilizing activists around the globe. You'll hear how Prescott College joined forces to help the community's capacity to do this important work, and University of Olivet students, alumni, and friends walk the part of this route this summer, bearing witness to both its beauty and its fragility. This keynote invites you to learn, to speak out, and to join the work of protecting the Great Migration, the beating heart of our planet's natural heritage, for summer 2026 and beyond. With us, we have Meitamei Olol Dapash. He's a Maasai community leader, activist, and founder of Merck Kenya, where he advocates for land rights, conservation, and indigenous leadership. He's worked with international allies for decades to protect Maasai culture and Africa's ecosystems. Dr. Mary Poole, historian and professor at Prescott College, teaches and publishes on U.S. and African history with emphasis on social movements, colonialism, and decolonizing research. Together, they co-direct Merck and the Dapash Center in southern Kenya, advancing land rights, environmental justice, and indigenous research. Their collaborative book, Decolonizing Maasai History, A Path to Indigenous African Futures, was published in 2025. Thank you so much for joining us, Meitamei and Mary, and we're really excited to learn from you.
And to introduce Meitamei to you. And so I'll just let him tell you what he's going to talk about today, which is a fight that he's leading right now at this moment to save the annual wildebeest migration by identifying and fighting against corrupt development that undermines the ability of wildlife to thrive. And so take it away, Maida. Yeah, is that good?
Sure, Ling. Thank you. Thank you very much. Absolutely so wonderful to see Kelly there and Steve. I think I saw him briefly and then he has disappeared. I'm very extremely honored to be here this evening. And it's unbelievable because some years ago, I would have had to board a plane to come to this meeting in the US, and now technology is enabling us to speak even from the banks of the Sand River, which is where all this action is taking place. So thanks to technology, it's making the world a true global village. And we are, those of us who are championing social justice, environmental rights issues, true beneficiaries of advancement in technology, as actually you can see. I will not introduce myself again. Nachpa has done a very good job introducing me, but again, for those who may have missed my name is Meitamei Olol Dapash, and I'm an indigenous Maasai person. I live in Kenya most of the time when I'm not traveling. And I work out of the Dapash Center, which, Kelly and Steve and the students from Olivet visited last year. And is it last year or this year? I can't even remember. My head is so full these days, man. So, so thank you again. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for this. And I'm very honored to be here. I don't want to talk a lot about myself. As an indigenous person, we are not actually trained to talk a lot about yourself because it amounts to gratification. But I also recognize that in academic circles, you have to mentioned those titles before, after your name, and to get credibility. But for us, it's really who you are, what you do for the community, and your track record, the work that you do for the people. That it matters more than any kind of title you have. But as Nashipa has said, I have a PhD in sustainability education. I have a master's degree in business and bachelor's degree in business. And but more importantly, I have several PhDs in indigenous Maasai culture as awarded by the elders and the community itself. So that one is is normally not included when we introduce ourselves, but I think it is something I'm extremely proud to have been brought up in Maasai land and going through every cultural rite, every cultural passage, or rite of passage, and here I am, bridging the worlds of different cultures. So I want to invite you this evening to journey with me to Maasai Mara Game Reserve, which is a northern part of Serengeti National Park. It's a Maasai Mara is the northern part of the great Maasai Mara Serengeti ecosystem, covering an area of about 560,000 square kilometers. That is if you include the entire ecosystem, including community dispersal, wildlife dispersal areas, and areas that are inhabited by wildlife. And I think I should point out that whereas this area has the highest concentration of mammalian life or mammals, the scientists tell us that 65% of wildlife actually does live among indigenous Maasai people, in their traditional lands, as opposed to protected areas. So I'm inviting you to this area, which is where this amazing global heritage, takes place. And the heritage I'm talking about is the Great Migration of Wildebeest, which is a global phenomenon. What we normally don't mention is that when we talk about the migration of wildebeest, it's not just wildebeest. Actually, we're talking about 1.5 or 2 million wildebeest moving in one direction at any given season and time. But we're also talking about millions of other species like zebras, gazelles, giraffes, and so forth. So it is a place that is considered to have one of the highest, wildlife densities on the planet. It's one of very, very few special places on the planet. As recognized by the UNESCO, UNESCO has listed Maasai Mara as one of the most fascinating or significant ecological places on the planet. And so it's a special place, not just for us, the Maasai people who live here and take care of these animals, but also for present and future generations of this country and of the world. So that's where we are today. And I would like to talk, to open my conversation by just telling you a very short story. On June 29th this year, I normally, when I'm tired or bored working from my office at the Dapash Center, I usually take a wildlife drive, and we are only about 5 minutes into the reserve, into the Maasai Mara Game Reserve. But on this particular day, I took a ride. It was mid-morning, and I drove along the Sand River. And the Sand River Hopefully you'll see it on the maps. If you Google Maasai Mara, Serengeti, you'll see that Sand River, this river, which is at the center of this environmental global controversy right now, forms roughly the border of Kenya and Tanzania. It forms the border, not just of the countries, but the border of Serengeti National Park and Maasai Mara Game Reserve. So I was driving along the river heading sort of north, so I started from south, and just about a kilometer away or so, I saw huge dust, like a cloud of just the dust just covering almost the entire sky in Maasai Mara. And I was wondering what was going on, and I thought maybe there were tons of dust devils or just some kind of really ferocious wind, sending the dirt spinning up in the sky and so forth. But we became very curious, and we started driving a little bit fast to find out what's going on. And when we got to this particular place called the Northern Crossing Point, wild beast crossing point along the Sand River, we discovered that the wild beasts had tried to cross the river from this point of construction, but were, startled by, the machinery and tons of people who are just working and power saws cutting trees, and there was this huge stampede that just like the wildebeest, started running in all sorts of directions, and the dust just, busted into the sky. So at that point, we stood on the eastern side of the river, and we just watched this wildebeest try to make their way back into the plains of the Serengeti. And we're not talking about distance, big distance between us. We're just talking about 500, 600, 700 meters from where we were standing. And it was at that point that we realized that Ritz-Carlton and Marriott International and several other local investors had actually been undertaking a massive construction of this luxury lodge called Ritz-Carlton Maasai Mara Safari Camp. And we were amazed, we were shocked, we were in disbelief, and we just couldn't comprehend how anybody, any right-thinking human being would have allowed this kind of development to take place in such an ecologically fragile place. So in that state of disbelief, we just drove back to the Dapash Center, and from that point on, I knew that the migration was truly under threat, and not just a migration, but so many other things that people don't tend to associate with a migration. So I met with my colleagues, and we started discussing about how to deal with this situation, because it was impossible just to reverse things, considering the level of investment that had already taken place. So as I said, that experience changed everything for us, and we knew that we were in for a long fight, a very, 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 very long fight, and we were also in for a very difficult fight, which involves, political interest, very powerful, rich commercial interests, and so forth. So for us, we knew that our job was going to be a very, very difficult one. So if I had prepared my slides today, I'd be showing you now the map of, the Maasai Mara Serengeti ecosystem, this particular place where Ritz-Carlton is located. But, I can share a slide presentation I gave a few days ago to our lawyers, and I can share that later so people can have a perspective, can have an idea of what I'm talking about. So what is migration? If I was in that classroom environment, I would now ask, what is migration? People say, it's movement of wildlife. People, wildebeest moving, from one place to the other, and obviously those movements are dictated by seasons and life cycles and so forth. But I just want to say that for us, the migration is much, much deeper than that abstract definition, which is, what we read and what tourists, that's how tourists define migration. It's a much deeper phenomenon for us than that. First of all, the sheer numbers of animals is really represent the uniqueness of creation and nature's ability to just bring life together, bring all these different species together, including human beings. So, and again, before Maasai Mara Serengeti system, the entire ecosystem was identified and created. Our people lived with these animals, and these animals were part of us and part of our identity. And they played a significant role in helping us understand the season, understand when the rains are coming, when the rains are delayed, and so forth. So for us, it's more than just this great movement of animals, which is so beautiful and just awesome. But it's much, much deeper, a much deeper, phenomena for us. The other way I would describe, migration is that it is in Kenya. We talk about, people talk about, land erosion. People talk about cultivation of land and all different forms of land use. And I think that there couldn't be a better way to put land into good use than allowing this natural habitat to exist, and remain the true habitat for the wildlife that call it home. Ecologically, the migration replenishes, the grasslands. So, and that's why we have the migration. If you look at the map of the migration, it is an annual thing, and it is moving every single day. There is not a single day that animals are not moving. They are on the move all the time. The reason they are doing that is that is just this unique way of, where nature makes where the wildebeest were, staying in one place, millions of them staying in one place, that land would become barren within a month, not even weeks. But God created, and Kai is our God, created this knowledge in animals where they know they can only be in this particular place for this period of time, and then they have to keep moving. And by the following year, at the same time, they will be exactly in that particular place. So that rhythm, that movement of wildlife actually does help regenerate the environment. The dung, the cow, I mean the wildebeest dung, the zebras and so forth help the environment regenerate. And I think you also, for those maybe we have people who are environmental students or teachers and so forth there. I think that when we talk about environmental sustainability, we are even talking about, they need to maintain certain desirable plant species that agriculture and all other forms of land use actually, get rid of these species? Well, the wildlife actually does maintain that ecological balance where you have different plant species, coexist. Others grow faster, and others slower, and that way you have, you have giraffes that feed on, on the have giraffes that browse. You have the wildebeest that feed on the short grass, and the zebras that feed on the long grass. And that symbiotic relationship can only be described in those terms. Actually, there is no other better way to describe it than, to acknowledge the fact that each of these species is desirable for the other's survival and for maintaining an ecological balance within the rangelands and the habitats. Then we also I talked a little bit about the culture. For the Maasai people, with the migration is sacred. It's tied to identity, and it's tied to our survival. And I think a lot of Americans understand the Amazon. Compare the Maasai Mara Serengeti ecosystem with the Amazon, the Arctic Ice, the Great Barrier Reefs, all those areas. That is how significant this place is to us. So with all this happening, the natural balance, things are happening naturally. The world is coming to Maasai Mara, to Serengeti to see this beautiful, land and its wildlife. But then what is often not seen is the threats that they are not obvious, they are not visible to a tourist who is traveling just through Marcel. And that's why activists and advocates for environment, land rights, and indigenous rights, that's why they are there. And that's why indigenous communities like the Maasai people are there, so that they can continue fighting and protecting this ecosystem and its wildlife. So some of the threats we are dealing with, of course, one of the biggest right now we have is the multinational hotel chains, and I think the most popular one. I send you several links about what's going on in the Mara, and the news coverage, the media coverage we've received across the world, which has really boosted, people's knowledge and understanding of the issues that we are dealing with. So we are dealing with multinational corporations, coming in and wanting to build luxury hotels, and they have to clear, riverbanks of, 1,000 years of trees that have, and Mara, it doesn't have a lot of tall trees, only, along the riverbanks. And when you begin to clear those forests, you are creating another environmental crisis. And then we have also, things like roads and fences and total fragmentation of the wildlife habitat, even in the dispersal areas. These are the things we are dealing with as advocates for environment and for indigenous rights. And it's a battle. Then we have issues like corruption. Now, in our case with Ritz-Carlton Marriott Hotel right now, we are dealing with a wide range of interests. We are dealing with people with a lot of money. We are dealing with people with political influence. We are dealing with, corrupt individuals who are working within the game reserve. We're dealing with a wide range of issues here. And those are some of the threats that, we are experiencing. But there is also the climate stress, which is making corridors, even, like I talked about the Maasai Mara Serengeti ecosystem and the wildlife migratory corridors between the two protected areas. The climate stress we experience everywhere is also having an impact on everything that is happening here. So I did say earlier on, and I don't want to run the risk of repeating myself, that when we realized that Ritz-Carlton had moved in, and Marriott, of course, because Marriott is a parent company, the Ritz-Carlton is owned by Marriott, and Marriott is a franchise. It's the one that sells a franchise to local investors. So it's a network of big corporations, big companies. So when we realized that they were going to go forward with the construction of this hotel, and by the way, by this time we had already engaged, the park management. They wouldn't listen to us. We had engaged the county governor. He wouldn't listen to us. And, they were moving forward as if nothing was happening. And partly because they really didn't expect that, indigenous people would be able to go to court and seek redress to this crisis. So, they ignored us. They just kind of brushed us aside and continued with the development. What is really worrying for, what I saw as a very worrying trend is that this hotel was built literally in 3 months. And at a cost of, I believe it was something to the tune of $500 million. In just 4 months. They were moving in containers, like 30 containers a day, and 400 workers there every single day. It was just unbelievable. So before we were even able to present our first protest letter, they were talking about opening Ritz-Carlton to these multi-millionaires from all over the world, So, but we realized that we needed to take action, and the only action that we had available for us at that point was to go to court. In Kenya, then we have a new constitution that was promulgated, or rather adopted in 2010. And this new constitution has a very solid section on environmental conservation and the rights of indigenous peoples and citizens, basically, to clean environment, safe environment, and also the right to protect the environment. That is granted in the Kenyan constitution. And so we invoked that constitution. We went to court and invoked that constitution, saying that, the construction of this hotel violated our cultural rights, our environmental rights, and therefore we were totally opposed to its development. Initially, we had gone to court to ask for orders to stop the hotel from opening, but it was a very bad timing because the court was in recess, and the judge who was sitting in at that time said that she wouldn't treat this as an emergency because, she saw it as not an emergency, but still gave it a priority, basis, gave us a hearing on a priority basis. And so our case is coming up in about 3 weeks. Which will be a showdown. We're going to be dealing with 6 very powerful lawyers from these corporations, and we have only 3 lawyers who are very poorly paid. But then we have the community, which is going to show up in thousands at that court and express themselves in what we normally call here in Kenya public court, because it matters here. That people express their opposition to some of these, things like this that clearly undermine the rights of the community and the rights of our wildlife. Because for us, wildlife has a right just as good and as important as that of a human being. And so, in fact, in our case, we've been asking the court if we can change the title of the case to be, rather than myself, because I'm the only petitioner right now, based on, we arrived at decision to have one petitioner as a matter of strategy. It's a strategic, reason. But we are even considering asking the court if it will allow my name to be replaced with a wildebeest, so that is a wildebeest versus Marriott International, Maasai Mara Game Reserve, the county government of Narok, and everybody, because we believe as indigenous people that animals are just as they have a right just equal to that of a human being. So we'll hear about that. It will be the first time that kind of request has been made, but we are always prepared to try new things in our, struggle for the rights of the community and the wildlife. So I don't want to talk a lot, actually, because I want to see if I can save some time for uh, some questions. But when we filed our application, our prayers were, number one, to now that we didn't get orders to stop the hotel from opening, we are asking the court to actually shut down the hotel. That's one of our prayers. And the other prayers is that we want criminalization of anybody who violates environmental law. That's our second prayer. And our third prayer is actually to make sure that not a single hotel development or any other kind of development happens in Marseille without the participation of the Maasai people in the decision-making process. So those are our prayers. And if the court grants us those prayers, then it means that the hotel will be brought down and we will start a restoration process for that whole area. And in the court, we are also asking the court to actually penalize the hotel, and require it to restore that, the environment to its near, because it will never be the same near its original status. Our strength in this court case that Ritz-Carlton and the others who are in court violated so many laws. They violated the National Environment and Management Authority Act, which actually requires that corridors must be protected and no development should take place in those sensitive, ecologically fragile corridors. They also violated the Kenya Wildlife Conservation and Management Act, which ensures that the rights of wildlife and the right to clean, safe habitat should always be observed. That has been violated. And then we also have United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, which we think that the approval process manipulated and, bypassed that process, which actually put in stringent steps for anybody who intends to develop who intends to develop a facility in a in an ecologically fragile place. The the other violations like transboundary agreements on the management of the Mara River ecosystem, convention for the management and protection of wildlife migratory species. In fact, that is a very, very powerful one because countries like Kenya are bound by that United Nations agreement that requires member states or signatories to that convention to make sure that one country does not make decisions that affect this migratory species. And so we've been in touch with Tanzania asking their position about this particular project, which violates that UN convention. So the list is very long. We have nine. We have 12. We have 12 legislations that have been violated by this project, 12 of them. Of course, including the Constitution of Kenya, which states that indigenous peoples have the right to accept or reject any kind of project located on their territory. That has been thrown through the window. And then for those of you who understand international law, we have um, the World Heritage Convention. It's another one you might want to look up. We have the United Nations Convention on the law of non-navigational uses of international water courses. Sand River is a critical, river because other than the Mara River, the only other river actually that does provide sufficient water even for species like the crocodile and the hippo, and for drinking water, for all these species is a Sand River. So it's the second most important river, and in this case, we feel that and we see as this project as a violation of that international treaty. And then we have the East African Protocol on Environment and Natural Resources Management. All these, there are very many, about 12 of them have been violated. So we go forward knowing that we have a very, very strong case. The Maasai people themselves are totally up in arms and they're against this project. And recently one elder asked me, how does Ritz-Carlton and Marriott, how do they behave, in their country of, origin? And I did some research. I lived in Washington, D.C. a little bit, and I do know that Marriott International is located on, I believe it is Wisconsin Avenue, up north of Washington, D.C. And I did a bit of reading, and I know that they claim to truly observe environmental and human rights laws. So for us, we've been asking why it became necessary for them to lower those standards that they claim to uphold in the developed countries, and like in the US, Japan, and European countries and so forth. Why in Maasai land? Is it because obviously indigenous territories are often considered very undefended? There are no people to defend, and even when you have people who want to defend the land and the people and the wildlife, they are marginalized, they are intimidated, they are coerced, they are all these things. And so it's usually easy to get over a situation like this. And I think that even when we started this matter, I don't think they had an idea that it was going to become a really big issue. And so we are very, very happy and very proud of what we have done so far. We are getting more and more global visibility in terms of this case. And we are appealing to, many people, institutions, tour operators, conservation groups and so forth to write to Marriott in Washington, D.C. and implore upon them to abandon this project, or at the very least to withdraw their franchise, because what gives is Ritz-Carlton the power is and even the sellability as a business entity is a name. They have a name, and that's why people are willing to pay $3,500 a night for an ordinary room and $26,000 a night for the presidential suite. It's because of the name that's behind this development. And so that's one of the things that we are asking our friends globally to do. They are writing a lot of letters, and of course, we've seen some of the responses from Marriott, this pretty standard response that they are committed to conservation to the respect of indigenous cultures and so forth, and that, the local investors assured them that they had met all the requirements, and that's all they tell everybody, not knowing that, this today, the whole of today, we were able to analyze, the degree of violation of the laws and regulations. I just read you, and it's pathetic. You cannot believe the violation, the degree of violation of these laws. Some papers were forged. One of the companies, local investors, is not even registered anywhere, doesn't have a tax ID. It's just a mess. And yet, if you see what they're selling this exotic destination where, you are getting a front row seat in observing nature, in its original state, really. So, so that is where we are. Of course, we will be engaging in fundraising at some point, because we don't have, obviously, we don't have enough money to sustain the fight. But, nevertheless, we will be reaching out to friends to support this cause. Now, I just want to point out one last thing, and that's to say that, and I hope I've summarized that we want to put pressure through letters, write to Marriott, and demand corporate accountability, and amplify our voices, and just support this indigenous movement for the restoration and protection of the migration, of the great migration of wildebeest. So I was just going to say that, one last thing that I wanted to mention is that it's not been easy for us, and because Kelly, you talk about, in fact, the title of my presentation here is, or rather, the title of this symposium is about courageous leadership. And I just want to say that when I talk like this, it may sound like it's easy, but it is actually not. We are employing so many strategies, and the multiple use of, different strategies is what has enabled us to come this far. Otherwise, we were destined just to give up the very first moment. So one of our greatest strategies, of course, the court is the first one, which is a normal way to seek justice. But in our country here, we realize that the courts alone cannot guarantee you victory, even when you have all your evidence, on the table. So we are combining several other strategies. One of them, of course, is community mobilization, which is where we are investing a lot of our time and resources to make sure that every single community member who speaks to anybody, or who speaks at any forum, talks about this particular issue, and how we collectively as a community are against this project. The second approach we are utilizing is the media. The media has been every single, human rights, land rights, social rights, environmental rights campaign we have undertaken in the last so many years of our work. The media has always brought us tremendous amount of success. And because what it does is it brings these issues out, and more people become aware, and you begin to get support even where you did not expect. And I'm talking about mostly political and moral support. Okay, it's very hard to come by financial support in Kenya or anything like that, but you get political, moral support here. It's an incredible, very useful currency for us. The other strategy that we utilize here is, and of course, when I talk about media, I'm talking about television networks, I'm talking about print media, and I'm talking about social media, which is highly effective here in this country now. Social media is overtaking, print media basically. So the other strategy that we are applying is what we call consistency strategy. The reason a lot of activism is not successful, the reason a lot of activists actually don't achieve most of the goals, most of the you are unable to remain consistent. And so for us, we know that any moment we relax, any moment we take a slower pace, we are actually going to find ourselves in very, very serious trouble. So, for those of I know at least Nashipai and some other people who've been following us, we make sure every single day somebody somewhere is posting something about this issue, or just like we have 20 people and we have you know, two people write letters today and then two tomorrow, and then we recycle back again. And, and then of course, then we get people from elsewhere who write these letters. We speak to radios, we go to all vernacular radio stations at least once a week. And we invite media. If we use this media house this time, we invite another one next week and so forth. So consistency for us as rather than us getting tired and getting worn out, actually we wear out our opponents by just being very, very, very persistent. And so those are some of the strategies we are using, and also those strategies compensate our lack of financial resources. So, so that's where we are right now. And I don't know, past time, I believe.
I deliberately gave us a little bit of a window in case we needed some time to continue talking. Yeah, we're good. Meitamei, I'm seeing all of these strategies. I'm writing them down really quickly, and I'm definitely going to share them out to everyone who has participated in the colloquium, as well as get them out to our students. See if we can get our environmental group engaged in sharing their voices from this side. There's a lot of work to be done, and oh my gosh, thank you for leading the fight, for the persistence. And
Thank you.
I mean, certainly fighting this kind of a fight, I mean, the weariness sometimes can be overwhelming, and your joy that you bring to fighting for good is energizing all of us that are learning about it. So thank you for your investment, your persistence on behalf of the environment and the world, and all of us that benefit from it.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I just saw Mayan. Hi, Mayan. Thank you, everybody.
One thing that I would like to share while we're all together is the fact that we had a conversation when we had 9 students and 4 friends of the university come together and came to the Dapash Center this past summer with Nashapai and with Meitamei, and we met the whole team, and we stood. Not gonna cry here. We stood on the banks of the Sand River, and we watched the hippos and we watched the alligators, and the ecosystem is absolutely amazing. It's a gift for all of us that we absolutely have to protect. And as we talked about the work that's done at the Dapash Center to engage the community and to help build the capacity of the indigenous community to build the resources and the support to protect their lands, their culture, their community. We talked about how we could continue as the University of Olivet being involved in helping. And so we wondered, is there a way for us to bring more students? And so Meitamei and Mary and a few of their board members said, we would like you to come back next summer, if you can do that, and help us with marketing the different what is the word I'm looking for? Entrepreneurial ventures of our Indigenous community, and to help learn marketing and specifically culturally specific marketing of how do we promote all of the great things happening at the Dapash Center and the opportunities there for people to learn how we all can be part of saving these cultural environmental resources and protecting the communities of the Indigenous population, the Maasai, who the Maasai moms taught us how to make bead bracelets. And we sat with them and learned from them, and they talked about their kids. We talked about our kids. We were invited to see Maasai homes. Olol taught us Maasai language and about the plants that could heal us. And they brought us out on the Mara to be, we walked along with the zebras and the giraffes, and to be there in that place that God has created for us, and to know that there's a fight going on to protect it, is heartbreaking and energizing, and we want to continue to do that work. So here for our audience, here is the invitation. We are planning on going back to the Dapash Center, going back to Kenya next summer. I'm going to go ahead and share something really quickly. Please stand by as I get it figured out here. I'm losing my Zoom here.
Maybe Kelly, while you're looking that up, I'll just add a note. I take students from the US back and forth a lot. Meitamei and I teach together and at Dapash, and one of the great joys of my life is getting to introduce my students here in the US to the reality that a lot of times what you're learning is so valuable to the world, and you don't necessarily know that when you're in school here and you're studying and reading books and writing papers, and then you take that knowledge and you bring it and you share it, and so yeah, I just wanted to add that point.
Mary, the conversations we've had
Wow,
about
nice.
what we've learned and brought back have just been so powerful.
Beautiful.
And so I'll just share a couple of the shots. This was standing, and this is a funny story. So there was a bank of bushes kind of to the left, and so we got to go into the bushes and I go, do we need to do in the bushes right next to the giraffes? It was just super, so real. And there are the giraffes. It was just super funny. And this is Olol, who was teaching us about the homes and the culture and the day-to-day life of the Maasai. And it's just absolutely fantastic learning there. So here's the opportunity. So we're putting together, it's called the Global Marketing Perspectives course for summer of 26. And so we're going to learn about cross-cultural and intercultural marketing and leadership and sociology. We're going to work together with Meitamei and Mary are going to teach us, as well as Olol and some of the other folks at Dapash. And we're going to learn about hospitality, retail, and just the struggles, the moral struggles of how do we make choices that are going to be generative in nature. And then international travel to experience all of these principles. And we'll have immersive learning. We'll be at the Dapash Center and learn about MERC, the Institute for Maasai Education and Research, through the work that we're doing there. So the Dapash Center, look it up, Google it. It is an absolutely fantastic center for learning and community engagement that is just absolutely delightful. So here we are making our beads, doing our beads with the Maasai mamas. And so the course, the way it will work, we will do 3 weeks online before we go, doing some learning and some prep. And then we will go to Kenya. We'll fly there, fly into Nairobi, and then travel by vehicle to the Maasai Mara. And so we'll be there for almost 3 weeks, and then we'll have a week to debrief, and we'll have a celebration and presentations. If you're interested, this is one of our trees, and this is one of the places that we went. The Soa Ranch. And so if you are interested in having a
Tusua, yeah.
conversation,
Mhm.
Soya Ranch, if you're interested in having a conversation, we're in the planning stages right now. And so we would need to know generally who would be interested. Students can come. You'll get a 3 credit hour class for your global marketing class, or for your liberal arts core, one of your liberal arts core classes. And so you would have to pay your tuition plus the travel. And I was able to go as a friend of the university, not necessarily as a professor, but that'll be shifting. But we had other folks who are part of the university and who are in the community who are welcome to come along as well and participate in all of the different activities, getting in the safari Jeep and going out to the Mara, all kinds of amazing things. If you're interested, shoot me an email and we will set up a time to get together and talk more. We'll invite Mary to come and Zoom with us and talk with us about it. And then also Zoe Hammer, who is our faculty, who is now out in Colorado. She'll be involved in the teaching and activities as well. So for Mary and Meitamei, thank you for the opportunity to continue learning and growing and being a part of the community that you all love so much and are taking such great care of.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so much,
Kelly.
everybody.
It's just such a wonderful thing to be a part of this too. Courageous leadership. There's nothing more important in this world. So, I've been really excited to connect with you all and the good work that you're doing out of Olivet.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for coming across the wavelength to talk with us. Best wishes in the fight. We are there with you, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you.
So we are going to now transition to our next program, continuing to learn about bringing people together for belonging. So let's get there.